Hi everybody, my name is Bill Keithler and I'm a candidate for school board here in Hopewell Valley. I made a video about a week and a half ago where I outlined my thoughts on the two school bond referendum questions, question 1 and question 2. If you haven't seen that video, I'm going to include a link to it in the comments below, and I'd encourage you to start there. Since that time, I've gone and I voted early. I voted early at the Pennington Firehouse, and I voted yes on both question 1 and question 2. What I wanted to do in this video, though, is talk more deeply about question 1. And this actually comes from somebody said to me, Bill, what are you most worried about? And the answer I gave was, the thing I'm most worried about is, 1, I'm going to get elected to the school board, and 2, the bonds are going to fail, right? So I would love to be on the school board, but gosh, it would be really tough to figure out how we're going to navigate this situation if the bonds fail. And I hate saying there's no other way to do this, like we have to pass these bonds, because that is intellectually lazy. And I've not been lazy. I've been trying to figure this out. I'm here to say I just can't figure out how we're going to make the improvements that we need without these bonds. So let me walk you through it. So what I always do is when I'm thinking about the school district finances, I think about our own finances. So in the Keithler household, my wife and I, every so often, after the boys go to bed, we sit down and we think, where's all our money going? And money comes in every month, and then it goes out every month, and where's it going? So broadly speaking, there's 3 categories of expenses in our house. So there's a lot of stuff that's exactly the same cost every month, right? Our mortgage, our insurance, our property taxes, the car payment. Up until just recently, we had preschool tuition, and then a smaller amount, but still the same every month, our gym membership. If you're looking for a gym, Pennington CrossFit, it's one of the best things about being in Hopewell Valley. It's a great community. But I'm just going to include that there, and that's a shout out to PCF. So then these are the things that are the same every month. There's a lot of categories that are variable. So we have expenses every month, but the amount changes. And things like groceries, restaurants, utility bills, gas for the car, and maintenance just around the house, maintenance for the car, all different types of maintenance, things that we have to maintain in our life. We know there's going to be spending on these categories. We just don't know exactly how much every month. This is normally what we think about. And then every so often, there's some big thing that kind of comes unexpectedly. And hopefully we can anticipate it and plan for it. But these are things like a new car, a new septic system, a new well, the chimney, you have cracks in your chimney. These are really big ticket items, all right? And if you have not put money aside in a rainy day fund, and if you've not put a lot of money aside in a rainy day fund, then you got to figure out how to finance it, all right? And the point I'm going to come back to, is this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about with question 1 on the bond. All right, I'm going to come back to this in a moment. First question I got is, Bill, why do we have $60 million of question 1 expenses? These are the end of life replacement costs, major repair work on things like a roof or heating and air conditioning system. Why is it $60 million? Why such a large amount? All right, so I think about it this way. My grandfather went to school in the 1920s. He wasn't from Hopewell Valley, but he was from central New Jersey. So it's kind of nice to think about, Grandpa Keithler going to Tollgate or Hopewell Elementary School when they were brand new 100 years ago. My dad went to school in the 50s and 60s, and Central High School would have been brand new for him, and he would have missed Bear Tavern and Tollgate by a couple years. He kind of a bit ahead of that, but that sort of baby boomer generation, these would have been the buildings that he would have known. I went to school in the 90s. I graduated in the early 2000s. I would have missed Stony Brook by a couple years, but this is kind of closer to my generation in terms of the new infrastructure. And then my boys, they're second grade in kindergarten now. Who knows what kind of new buildings they'll see in their time here? Maybe none, or maybe it'll just be an extension on Bear Tavern and Tollgate, or who knows? The question mark there. But why do we have so much of end of life replacement cost? Well, it's because my boys are going to the same school that their great grandfather would have gone to, and in a couple of years they'll be going to the same middle school and high school that their grandfather would have gone to. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I like it. This town has character. This town has history. But when your buildings have history, you got to be thinking about, major expenses for replacing things. That's what we're talking about here. So coming back to this, a new car, tens of thousands of dollars. A new septic system. Anybody in Hopewell Township that owns property that's not connected to town sewers knows what I'm talking about. We just had to replace our septic a couple years ago. That was $50,000 plus. We did a lot of well work a couple years ago. The chimneys are starting to have cracks. Like, it's expensive to be a homeowner in Hopewell Township. How do we pay for this stuff? Well, the car is the most sort of intuitive to everybody. If you need to buy a new car, usually what you do, some people pay cash in full. Others will put some money down, and then they'll take a car loan. And over the course of the next, say, 5 years, you'll pay off your loan, and then you own it in full. And then hopefully, you drive your car longer than that. I drive a 2014 Honda CR-V. We paid it off a long time ago. We hope to keep driving it for a while. It's the kind of car that you look at it and you say, well, that guy's obviously got 2 kids. But it works, and we don't need a new car, knock on wood. That's kind of how you finance these things. We borrowed money to purchase it, and then we paid it off, and hopefully we can drive it for a while. Now, let's get into the details of the district's finances, where the money's going. All right, what we've got here, this is Hopewell Valley Regional School District. We have revenue coming in, that's blue. So total revenues for the district are $105 million. Of that, $90 million is property taxes. So these are the property taxes that you and I pay, and there's an extra $15 million of other revenue. The biggest line there is, money from the state of New Jersey that maybe reimbursements for things like special education. So it's not general purpose money. It's typically tied to specific line items. But my point is, it's not just property taxes. There is some additional revenue coming in, but most of it, $90 million, is property taxes. So that's the money that we have coming in, the cash coming in. Going out in black, these are the expenses, $105 million of cash being deployed. Of that $105 million, $89 million is money that we pay people, salaries and benefits. $89 million. All right. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's what it is. Then there's $16 million of everything else, and I've tried to take this $16 million box and put it up here so you can see it a little bit more clearly. About a quarter of that is for classroom costs, so not the teachers' salaries and benefits, but the everything else about the classroom. There's about $4 million of maintenance. Then there's debt service, another sort of $3 to $4 million. And then there's everything else. The biggest chunk of the everything else is extracurriculars. So this is where the money's going. And if we zoom in a little further on the people costs, most of it is for teachers in the classroom. Then the next biggest item is for support staff, then the ops and maintenance folks, and then administrative salaries and benefits. I'm not putting specific numbers here, and that's not me trying to obfuscate. It's just the way that, so the source of the data is the district's user-friendly budget. But the way that I'm showing it here is not exactly how it's presented in the user-friendly budget. So I'm just showing you my honest sort of best effort of how I think the numbers work out. I think the classroom teacher salaries is north of 60 million. I think it's in the 63 to 65 million dollar range, but that's not explicitly called out in the user-friendly budget, so I don't want to put a number here. The key takeaway here, the key takeaway is if we need to raise $60 million for the projects in question one, we cannot cut $60 million of expenses out of a $105 million budget. It's just not possible. Even if we were to say, okay, we're going to do these projects over 2 years and do 30 million each year, I don't think we can cut $30 million out of this budget. Maybe if we were trying to cut 2 or 3 million, maybe we could get that done. But these numbers are just too large. So how do we find finances? Well, there is a rainy day fund, and I want to sort of call attention to that. We have $7 million in the capital reserve, what we call a rainy day fund in the Keithler house. In the school district lingo, that's called a capital reserve. And there's about $7 million in there, which is great. I'm not saying that's bad. The fact that we have any money at all in a capital reserve is an accomplishment. And I have a lot of thoughts about that. But I'm gonna maybe save that for a separate video. But the key point is, even if we subtract 7 million from 60, we still can't pull $50 million out of this budget. It's just not something that we can do. So we have to borrow the money. And that goes back to my original point, which I hate to say we have to do it. I hate to say there's no other option, because again, I've tried. I've not been intellectually lazy here, but it's just the reality, the way that things are. So that's that. My biggest fear is I get elected and question one fails. So please join me in, at minimum, voting yes on question one. I recognize there's folks that are worried about cost of living, and are worried that they won't be able to afford to live here. And I'm particularly mindful of folks who are trying to retire in place, people that really built this community over the past 20 and 30, 40, 50 years and are now on a fixed income. And, I wish there was a way to finance the big ticket items we need to finance without the bond. I don't know any other way. So I'm asking you, please join me in voting yes on question one. And then when we think about the district and, how we can control expenses, well, there's some things, we can be, I talk about being polite but persistent in controlling costs. We got to look at everything with a fine-tooth comb. This is not how we raise $50 or $60 million for capital improvements, but it is how we can sort of try to put the brakes on growth and spending. I'm going to make another video to talk about that. For now, I hope that this was helpful in at least addressing why it's imperative that we vote yes on question one. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to, geek out with you on the numbers if anybody's interested in sort of spreading the district's finances with me. Let's keep the conversation going, and have a great day.